Good evening, everyone. What a great program we have for you tonight. I'm Ahmed Fauzi, and welcome to Peace One Days. Excuse me, we've been doing this all day, and it's a lot of fun. And we've had some very interesting guests and moments, but today the lineup is just formidable. The people you see on my left are Jude Law, Jake Chapman, and Patrick van der Vorst. More about them in a minute. Art has been an incredibly important element in raising awareness and financial support for Peace One Day. Before we hear from Jude, Jake and Patrick, let's first take a look at a trailer that will explain. It's a film made for Peace One Day's AKA exhibition, which Jake, I think it's the first project that you curated.
That's right,
for Peace One Day. It's 4 minutes long. Let's look at the trailer and we'll come back. Good evening, welcome back. I'm Ahmed Fauzi, and with me I have Jude Law, the Peace One Day ambassador and actor. I've also got Jake Chapman next to Jude, who's a well-renowned artist and long-term supporter of Peace Day. And Patrick van der Vorst. Patrick, also welcome, CEO of something called Paddle8. We'll hear more about that in a minute. What an incredible exhibition that was, we saw the trailer of. Now we're going to hear from Jake and Jude and Patrick. Welcome to you all. Jake, how did you become involved in supporting Peace Day?
It was through my good friends James Golding and Sean Pertwee, who kindly introduced me to Jeremy Gilley and in relation to his work for Peace One Day. And I think when I met Jeremy, he was so overwhelmingly charismatic about his project that it was impossible to. It was an offer I couldn't refuse. Really, he was. I was just very, very compelled by his project and by his enthusiasm for a kind of a non-political attempt to present some concept of peace that wasn't kind of eroded by sort of partisan sort of beliefs. It just seemed to me to be very, very interesting project, and his charisma and his enthusiasm was just very difficult to deny. I mean, I'd love to have said no, but I couldn't.
I think many of us here know what you're talking about. Jake, can you give us some background on some of your previous projects with Peace One Day?
Yes, we've made a couple of projects. One project was 2012, which was the AK-47 project, which was the idea of taking decommissioned AK-47 guns and giving them to a number of artists who could somehow, I guess, revoke their violent past and turn them into objects that would somehow, pervert the function of the gun and turn it into a work of art, and then we could actually sell the pieces and fund more action for Peace One Day. And we kind of reached out to a lot of serious and important contemporary artists who were very generous with their time and who then produced some really interesting things. And we were able to, I think, I'm not sure how much we... £467,000, which I think is a pretty astonishing amount of money.
One of them involved, I think, a machine gun turned into a guitar, or
they were all AK-47s, so they were all semi-automatic weapons that had, you know, even just by the nature of their, you know, their scars and their dents, they demonstrated that they had some kind of erroneous past, and it was just interesting to have artists produce, to turn them into something which was kind of antithetical to their purpose. And changed, you know, that you could kind of, you know, quite nicely sort of pervert the function of a gun for the purpose of peace.
Remarkable. Jude, how did you feel about your first exhibition with AK-47s and M16s?
Well, it just seemed, you know, at the heart of this organisation is a really simple idea. It's to raise the conversation of peace, to create a day of peace that is sustained year in, year out. And this just seemed like a brilliant and very simple concept, really, to take something of, you know, with a violent past and turn it into something that raised that question and also raised funds for further peace operations, if you like, was a simple and effective and incredibly enjoyable, because the people that they got involved were fantastically talented, and the pieces they made were all incredibly interesting, so it was really successful. And a joy to see, you know, how each person used this piece, and they were really varied. It was very interesting. Some were decorated, some were simply covered in thorns, some were put into some kind of a bigger scenario, some were turned into spades. I mean, it was really
it is
effective.
To see an instrument of death turned into a work of art, isn't it? It's quite a transformation.
Yeah.
Jake, you travelled with Jude and Peace One Day to the DRC. Can you tell us a little about your experience there?
Yeah, yeah, we travelled from Rwanda to Goma, and it was quite, you know, an amazing experience, actually, considering I'd never sort of personally experienced anything firsthand. I mean, I think the conversation was with Jeremy that if I'd contributed to, you know, with the auction project, that in some senses that I should go and see firsthand the effects of, you know, such charitable work. You know, the school building, and you know, it was quite a shocking thing to see, a shocking place to see people, you know. Just in a situation of war, post-war, you know, a refugee camp we saw, and it was just quite shocking to see. I think it took me about 6 months to blink after when I came home. The serenity of the Cotswolds seemed to be a kind of a quite, you know, slightly an outrageous vista after seeing that. Really, you know, it really did affect me. But you know, on the upside, it was an amazing event. There was the concert and. Which was, you know, quite an astonishing sort of kind of pool of enthusiasm, which is, you know, quite amazing.
There is this post-traumatic syndrome sometimes, coming back from a conflict zone to an area of peace, that affects you.
Well, I think, you know, I think the magnitude of the problem is, you know, it's all well and good having sort of an empathy from a distance, but when you're in the locality of the problem, you know, the magnitude kind of actually, it gets bigger.
Yeah.
Your local experience doesn't give it kind of proportions of understanding. Actually, you know, you find it actually quite overwhelming because it's kind of greater than you can imagine.
What is it that inspires you most about Peace Day? I'll ask this to both of you.
I think the idea of, even in the smallest way, having a respite from the feeling of absolute helplessness in terms of what can actually be done, and that this offers, in some senses, one idea in which there is, you know, within the kind of the reach of what I can do as an artist, that I can make, you know, I really don't want to say a difference, but I can act. And that, being able to act rather than being inactive and passive is a massive difference for me. And, you know, and that's not to say that I'm making kind of connections between my actions and outcomes. But just the idea of being able to act is the thing for me.
That's rewarding in itself.
I don't think it's about reward. I think it's about a literal understanding of saying that the difference between being a passive observer of something and someone who can enact a set of propositions, momentums, it's about action, and it's not about kind of perceiving reward, because I think in that sense that reward to me feels like a very unhumble proposition, because it's about kind of doing things for a kind of an outcome. I think this is just about putting something in momentum for me.
I didn't mean material reward, I meant spiritual reward in itself. Jude, what is it that inspires you most about Peace Day 21 September?
Well, I think I mirror what Jake said, but I always remember this little boy. We met on a roadside in Afghanistan, and as is often the way with Peace One Day, we had our camera rolling all the time, and I can't remember what it was. We were either waiting for a guide or we hadn't broken down, but I think actually we were waiting for a clearance to go across what was an old landfield, minefield rather. And this little boy kind of wandered out of nowhere, and Jeremy, being Jeremy, was like, "Oh, come on, let's talk to the little boy." And we got a translator, and we talked to him about what we were doing there, and we asked him. He was about 8, and we said, he wasn't quite sure how old he was, but anyway, we were talking to him about peace and so on, and he had no understanding of what the word peace meant. Because this is a kid born in, there've been 50, 60 years of violence and conflict in his country. So when we kind of described it to him, it was literally like planting this tiny seed that he thought, that's possible. And the idea that just starting that planting that seed is getting someone's imagination, someone who's going to grow and build a future, started, is a really exciting prospect.
Children are devastated in areas of conflict where they've only known conflict, as you said, in the DRC for over 20 years, in Syria today for 5 years. I'm going to ask the three of you this question. What role can art play in peace? Let's start with you, Patrick.
It's an interesting question. Art in peace, I think art can express what words can't express. And I think sometimes a powerful photograph, a powerful sculpture, a painting can actually be more powerful than endless articles or books or interview on the subject matter. And I do think that's the impact that art can have. It's sort of like a 1 second impact that can actually make somebody think, not necessarily change their minds, but at least think and start a thinking process.
Yeah, our focus is art for peace in this segment. And Jake, what role do you think art can play in peace building?
I'm kind of pessimistic about the function of art in this way. I mean, certainly if you can think about the work that I make, it's kind of confrontational in the sense in which it doesn't present a very positive attitude about the notion of how art functions. But I think in some ways, I take up the idea that it can present a different point of view and therefore by implication maybe change perspectives. But I'm kind of cautious about that. But I think for me as a curator brought in to do something like curate an exhibition is that it gives a very material relationship between the function of a work of art and the way it can expedite money by getting collectors to buy the works of art. So that for me the function of the auction is not just simply for the artist to express some opinion about violence or war, but it's also so that collectors can express a financial connection by also being connected in the process. So for me the process isn't kind of autonomous or internal to the work of art. It's about actually encouraging people to buy works of art so that they can actually almost surreptitiously redirect money, which we all know should be given in taxes and should be given by governments, which isn't, towards these kind of projects. So I'm a much more, my interest and my function as an artist is probably more material than you'd expect.
But it's an interesting angle on how art can contribute to peace building.
Yeah.
Jude, do you believe art can contribute to peace building?
I mean, I don't think I can add a lot more than what's already been said, other than maybe, it's this organisation, I feel like I've said this a lot already tonight. That you know, it's about building conversations and asking people to at least discuss their opinion of peace, their feelings of peace. And to me, art always does that. It should, in my mind, it provoke and can provoke feelings, thoughts, perhaps into areas that you're not usually likely to go into, or indeed comfortable to go to.
When I talk about art, it's also film and music.
Yes, absolutely.
And that those mediums can also inspire people.
Well, quite. I mean, Jeremy's documentary was my first sort of hook into the whole organisation. And as you say, I can think of books that have sort of provoked a sense of peace, or raised my own perception of what I think peace could be. You know, I can think of works by Jake that I've seen that have made me think about. It doesn't have to be directly like, oh, you know, I saw this and I thought of peace. It maybe makes you think about conflict, and what's your relationship with conflict? What's your relationship with violence? And how does that make you? How does it sit in your system? You know, and the same with films. I mean, films are. I said on the radio on the way in today. You know, films are so often raked in and accused of being responsible for provoking violence in our society. Or I mean, it's a real chicken and egg situation. Or are they reflecting the violence that's in society? You know, as long as the conversation, storytelling and artistic expression is a part, and has been a part of our expressive arsenal since, you know, for 30,000 years. I mean, it's a very important terrain, and peace is a very key element of that.
I'll change tack here for a minute. Jake, why do you care about the destruction of art in areas of conflict?
Again, I'm sort of kind of cautious about just universalizing the concept of art, you know, and I care about the destruction of anything in regions of conflict. I mean, I'm kind of cautious about worrying that art is the predominant concern because it seems of higher value than, you know, human life, you know. I mean, it seems to me that, you know, if we think about what's happened with Brexit, the notion that, you know, the idea that of the injunction against the free movement of people and the desire for a single market means to say that it's more possible for a commodity to move more freely than a person. And so I'm worried about the idea of thinking about art as being worthwhile because it has some historical and commodified value. But obviously, you know, if you're kind of, you know, if you're purposefully erasing people's history, that's kind of, you know, you're erasing people. Yeah, I'm not sure if that's a kind of tautology or complete amounts of
absolutely.
But just
but you're known for creating provocative art.
Yes.
Sometimes not easy on the eye.
Well, I don't know. It depends whose eye.
It does indeed. It does
I mean,
indeed. But I mean, you stray away from conventional conceptions of what makes art beautiful, or what makes beautiful art.
Well, I mean, why should art have?
Can you tell us why?
Well, I would argue, I would question why art has to have anything to do with beauty. I mean, I think, you know, unless we're kind of bound by Socratic principles of art, which I think are, you know, I don't know, they're kind of, I mean, you know, you could even sort of invoke a question of realism by saying that is a kind of a puppy and a landscape and a petal or a tear dripping down a little girl's face, a kind of an adequate representation of the conditions of experience? Or would it be better to say that kind of a drone strike is a more realistic representation of daily life? I mean, it might not be for us, but kind of this is kind of, we're kind of suggesting that our daily life is a kind of a saccharine version of a reality which is more kind of imperative to us, for us to really think about.
I have a couple more questions about peace and art, but let me turn to Patrick. Patrick, tell us what Paddle 8 is. So
Paddle 8 is an online auction house, basically. So it was founded in 2011, and there's a focus on non-profit auctions, and then there's a profit side. So we often work with charities. We've worked with over 250 charities today, where we help them not just organize auctions to fundraise for their respective charities, but actually to maximize the fundraising, because we generally believe that using an online platform you can reach just literally everybody, which in an offline auction is not always easily achievable.
And does Paddle 8 have a history of holding benefit auctions?
Yes, we have a history of benefit auctions. We have probably about 10 to 15 benefit auctions per year. Each of them are very unique to the charity, and so we sit down with the charities and discuss exactly what they would like to achieve, because there's not only the monetary value and trying to achieve a target figure, which hopefully will beat the £400,000 that was achieved previously, but it's also helping them to tell the story, helping them to achieve basically the communication, what they want to communicate.
What are the benefits for collectors of an online auction? Are there any benefits that they wouldn't get in offline?
Well, it's like in our auction, for example, there are works of art in there that have been specifically created for today's charity, and then it's very interesting because then you see the artist think and reflect on a very specific topic, which otherwise they might not necessarily do. So as a collector, it enables you to engage with the artist that maybe you wanted to buy a work of on a different level and on a very specific subject.
Jake, I understand you chose Paddle 8 as a auction platform. Can you tell us why?
Because these guys have got the credit card numbers of all the people who matter. And
well,
good answer. Hey,
and
hey.
Hopefully the PIN numbers.
And you knew that how exactly? Okay.
You know, you said before, you talked about, I think, a really important point, which was also encouraging, art buyers to feel like their money was going in the right direction. I mean, is that something that you think you can, or that Paddle 8 can also encourage in them? It's not just buying great pieces of work, but it's also I mean, are they aware of that?
Oh, they're very aware of that. Yes. No, they're very.
Which I guess makes it a little easier, right?
Yes.
Everyone feels happy if they're getting something, but they're also.
Because a lot of people want to donate money for a specific charity, but if they can get a work of art as well, it's a win-win for everybody.
Right. Great.
Jake, can I ask you, for the artists, if there are any watching this tonight, and might be inspired, what do you suggest they do to support Peace Day?
Well, I think, join Peace One Day, the organisation. I think really it's the best thing people can do is to try and self-organise. Try and, it's possible for people to do, maybe for next year people could do their own exhibitions. I mean, there's ways of contributing. I mean, they've obviously missed the deadline for this auction. But, of course, we're always going to be looking for artists who are prepared to contribute and be part of something.
Can you talk a little bit about this year's, briefly, this year's Peace One Day art initiative?
Yes, it's with Paddle 8. It's a kind of a how would you say? It's the great and the good. And everyone else attached, really. It's an exhaustive list of really good artists who've been invited to contribute to Peace One Day. I mean, some of these people are repeat offenders, so they'll know what they're getting into. And it's encouraging to know that they've actually they've been happy to step forward and do it again. I mean, some pretty big artists. So I think what's interesting is maybe that this year the curation itself didn't have a thematic to it, so no one was sent guns or bombs or anything to reappropriate into the mechanisms of peace thinking. So in some senses, in a way, they're just giving their work. So the call to arms now is less. It has to be. They're doing it kind of willingly, without having to. Be pressurised by the antics of curators like me.
Interesting. Jude, do you have anything to add to that about the Peace One Day art initiative?
I hope everyone. I'm really just keen to see what that inspires in people, and keen to see what work comes out.
Yeah, yeah. Patrick, you know, I have to turn to you because there's been a lot of talk about your list of your list of customers, clients. A lot of our audience might not be registered to Paddle 8 on Paddle 8. How safe and simple is it to make a bid?
It's very simple. It's like registering for Uber. So you just go on, you put your first name, last name, email address, and credit card, and that's it. You can bid in two ways. You go online to paddle8.com, so it's paddle and then the number 8.com, or else you download the app, and then you can start bidding there as well. So it's very simple.
Be interesting.
And once you place a bid as well, and you get outbid, you get a notification that you're outbid, so you can increase your bid. So it's a fun process as well.
Let's get it started. It'd be interesting to hear your thoughts on some of the specific lots available on the Peace One Day auction.
Yes, so there's a wide range of items. So we literally have artwork starting from £100 up to 10,000 and beyond and beyond. So we put the auction live this afternoon, literally like 4 hours ago, and we already have bids flowing in. I think last time I looked, we had about 35 bids, which is great. What seems to attract a lot of people is there are some Marlboro cigarette packs painted by Anthony Mikulev, and one of them has already got 8 bids on. So that's doing well. There's a Gavin Turk peas stuff, which is rather beautiful, which is very nice. So that he made that specifically for the auction. Then we have a Damien Hirst print at £10,000. And then I think actually to culminate, the last lot of the auction is one of Jake's lots, which is a very interesting lot, which maybe you can explain the mechanism around it.
Yeah, I mean, when I say antics, I kind of contradicting myself. Yeah, so so our proposed project is that the bids will come in and we'll make the work that equivalent to the top bid. So if we make £5, you might get some little lump of Lego. And yeah, so it's a kind of, you know, it's a kind of we're kind of testing the parameters of the bidding before we decide what to make. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay, look, finally, to all of you, what would you say, if any collectors are watching, what would you say to collectors considering bidding? If they're considering bidding, what would you tell them?
Me?
You, and you.
To collectors?
Collectors.
I would say collect. Generously.
Yeah.
That was succinct.
I think that's good.
Jake?
I would say, you know, the thing is that your part is as active as the action of the artist. By bidding for these works, you are as active in terms of being part of a charity as the people who made the work. So it's not limited by the artist or the auction house. And by paying for things, you are doing something direct. You are acting.
Yes, very true. There's not much more to add, but I'd say yes. As a collector, this is a moment that you can put your two hats on, your collector's hat, and then also your contribution to society hat and your charity hat. And I think it's a fantastic opportunity for collectors to step in.
What a wonderful day to wrap it up. Thank you, Jude, Jake, and Patrick. Sounds a bit like John, Paul, and Ringo, but it's been really interesting and inspiring listening to the three of you. Thank you for coming in so late in the day. Thank you all for watching our program this evening. And we have one final show tonight for you. It's a Peace One Day music celebration. Music. And do I tell them who it is or not?
Yes.
You think?
Yeah, I know.
Jermaine will be here to sing his single, I Wish. And remember, this is the day to make peace. To reach out to someone, to tell them you're sorry or tell them you love them. Don't be shy. This is the day to do it. There's time to do it. And we'd love to know what you're up to, so share your thoughts with us on social media. Bye for now. Thank you for watching. Thank you to Jude, Jake, and Patrick. I'll see you again soon.